Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and as it originated in the 60s with Steve Ditko's really abstract, beautifully out there art in an era of real psychedelia and Eastern mysticism meeting Western logic. You know, this is a character that comes from a medical background. He's a man of logic. He's a neurosurgeon, a top neurosurgeon in New York. And he's arrogant and successful, and he has this appalling car crash and loses the ability to perform surgery. His hands are nearly completely destroyed. And in seeking healing, he stumbles across this mystical figure called the Ancient One in this last-ditch attempt to heal his hands. And there she opens his mind to the potentials beyond what he's experienced of reality and what his true purpose is, which is to be a healer through his hands as a sorcerer. And the character arc really is from that point at the beginning where he's egotistical and very much doing it for himself, to being at the end a hero who realizes it's not all about him and he has to do something for the greater good. So he doesn't use the magic to heal himself, which he could. It was complete C7, C8 spinal cord injury, paralysis from the waist down, just no chance of walking. And I discover him on a basketball court, having got a lead from a physio, and I'm really at my wit's end. I've spent all my money. And, you know, there's no cure in sight. My hands are still a mess. And, this guy Pangborn pops up, and eventually in the scene with him, which he plays brilliantly, he says, I'll give you the name of the place, go there and have your own adventure with it. It's not for everyone, try it, you know. And he goes and he's resistant, and then the Ancient One just literally blows his mind. I had fun improvising that bit in particular, but, you know, I really wanted to up the game with the humour, but it's such a strong suit of Marvel's anyway. You know, they're not po-faced, they don't take themselves too seriously. They've got great reverence for the original source material. So, you know, super fans can have a lot to look forward to, but at the same time, this is a movie that will bring a new audience with it, hopefully, because it is a departure in style and in tone in a lot of ways. But humour is a great, as we know, it's the thing that oils almost everything in our lives, and thank goodness for it. And never is that more important than when you're playing a character from an era of occultism. And you know, he was incredibly arrogant in the original comics, and it could be a bit of a turn off if that's just the one note of him. So I was determined to have a journey so that you see him failing a lot. So if he is arrogant, there's then a massive, you know, fall after that moment of pride, and then on top of that there's great humour. Because he's entering a really bizarre world, and you're asking the audience to go with him. So you've got to reflect some of the audiences. It's bizarre what he's being asked to accept. So there's a lot of comedy that's situational, but also some really witty moments in the script as well. And I love that anyway. That was my idea. It was very early on in filming, and we were doing stuff obviously in sequence with where we were filming. And you know, the Cloak already had a presence as a character beyond just being a prop, but it really upped some with that moment onwards, because I just thought, you know, I just improvised this idea that it was trying to wipe the tear off my face, and for the second time, you know, just such a great moment for our generation of tennis lovers to be able to applaud an Englishman, a Scotsman, but, you know, someone we call our own, playing at the height of his powers and winning one of the highest pressure tournaments in front of a home crowd. And his game was extraordinary. How you can return, he's the greatest returner of serve, I think, on the planet, and how he managed to do that consistently when he was getting that kind of a serve. And, you know, right back at him, massive fan of his. You want to democratise theatre, you want to make it more accessible on a money scale, but also on sheer logistics. Like, people don't live in the country or can't for some reason travel. This idea of it being filmed, and they do it so well, you still feel like you're watching a stage production, but you're doing something that's live, and even if it's shown after the event, it's still an audience watching it in one fell swoop. It gave us a real adrenaline rush in a good way, in a kind of reinvigorating way, I think. I think, no, they're really adept at making sure they're filming what the audience in the theatre gets. And the two times I've done it, the once before was for Frankenstein, and the two times I've done it, the audiences that have been there have said no matter what the camera was doing, whether it was moving on an arm and slightly in front of their view, it was electric. It was exciting for them to be in the audience. So it was a good night in the theatre as much as it was a good night in the cinema theatres as well. I was a new parent, and I think that image shocked anybody who has a child, or, you know, those who don't. I mean, but as a new parent, I think I was particularly susceptible. I don't know anyone who wasn't moved or touched by that, and maybe I got carried away and I shouldn't have said some of what I said. But all I was trying to do was shine a light on an issue that was at certain times being overlooked so soon after the event, and trying to raise money for that. I fully stand by what I did. Maybe the way I did it could have been better, you know, through that organisation, and spurred on by other friends of mine who, you know, just felt helpless watching that footage and wanted to do something to try and make some kind of a difference. And, all I was doing was speaking about it in an impassioned way, and sometimes getting a little carried away. But to the credit of the audience, they were the people receiving that message. They were the people digging their hands in the pockets, not the people that were commenting on what I said or what I did. And they were incredibly generous. We raised a lot of money in a very short space of time. And I'm eternally proud that they did that. And I'm happy that I was the one, at least, asking them to have a think about it. That's correct. And I don't know enough about it because I'm not on the ground. I'm here in a radio studio talking to you, so I wouldn't like to comment, but it seems worrying, and enough people, in the grown-up sections of charities that care for the welfare of the young and the vulnerable are very, very worried about the speed with which it's being done and how it's being done. So, politically, I know I've got myself into trouble in the past by speaking out of turn. Look, I know I'm a white privileged actor, but I also have a profile and a lot of attention on me, and I gladly shine the spotlight on those who need that attention, and not me. But also that includes the aid workers, the charity workers who are dealing with this firsthand. So they're the people that you really need to ask an opinion about of this instance, because they're there on the ground trying to deal with this. But I mean, like everyone looking at the news feeds, it's worrying. It's very worrying. Yes, I can say that now. It's something I've always loved watching when I've had the opportunity. And my God, they're some of the finest comic talents of our time. And I can't wait to get in a room with them and try to make some funny. Yeah, I think it is.